presentation comparing utilitarian arts to liberal arts.
It says, no, I'm not going to read out our prompt. You guys know.
So I'm going to talk about the 7 liberal arts. It originated in ancient Greece. They were the creators of it, and it was passed on to Europe. And then it came over to the U.S. as we inherited it. And it's geared towards people who like to think in higher intellect, who are more intellectual people. So there's 2 divisions. There's the trivium and the quadrivium, and the trivium is the lower division. It consists of 3 areas of study, because it's tri, so trivium. So logic is the first one, and that has to do with thinking. Grammar is the second one, and that has to do with inventing and combining words. And rhetoric has to do with communication, which is mostly used today as a class. It's a product of mind and language, and it's also known as language arts. The quadrivium is the upper division, and it consists of 4 areas of study. Arithmetic and geometry are 2 of them, and they are mostly in STEM programs today. And there's music and astronomy, which are typically electives today, so they're kind of put at a lower order in schools. And they have to do with quantities of matter. And Plato, back in the medieval age, he wrote a book called Plato's Republic, and it was basically a curriculum for a BA in a medieval university.
So, kind of like the last group, you guys talked about specialized areas for study. Utilitarian arts are specialized. So they are things like masonry, carpentry, plumbing, salesmanship, printing, and then editing, banking, law, and medicine. And so those are studies that you can go into directly, and I mean, you do have to, today, you have to know a lot more before you can go into these things, like, or specifically law and medicine come to mind, and banking as well. But these are just specialized. You go into these and you have like a set job when you're done, and you're not studying like music so much, you're not studying arithmetic or astronomy specifically for those to like gain a better understanding of like everything. You're studying these things for the purpose of going into these fields. So that's what utilitarian arts are. Utilitarian arts are based, or they're founded by utilitarianism. They're not really founded by, they came from utilitarianism, and utilitarianism is the philosophical school of thinking where they believe that the ends justify the means. So happiness is basically good. So good, happiness, bad, pain. So you do things for good, which brings you happiness, and then you avoid other things, which will bring you pain. That's the basic idea of utilitarianism. And also, utilitarianism is actually like a huge thing. So it's actually like the argument against this. And so utilitarianism also talks about like the greater happiness. And so these, although carpentry, masonry, plumbing, like all of these arts do not necessarily like make you happy, they will bring happiness to the greater society, and that is what utilitarianism is about. And also, when I was talking about happiness as a whole, happiness is also, it's for the greater good, and you can also look at it as happiness is when you're doing this job, you're going to get money out of it, and then you're going to be able to support your family, and you're going to be able to live a good life, and that's what's good about it. You have a very like tangible endpoint of happiness, whereas with like language arts and liberal arts, you study all of these things to gain enlightenment, and enlightenment is kind of out there, and you don't really have an exact like endpoint, because we don't really know what enlightenment is, or we do know what enlightenment is, but it's impossible to achieve until you're until you're dead, but that's not attainable right now. So like I said, labor equals material gain or happiness, and utilitarian arts are transitive activities, so you can gain happiness out of these. And so we have a picture of a, what is that?
Dresser.
A dresser, because that is an example. And yeah.
So we did a comparison between classical education and modern education, and historically classical education was liberal arts. There's a few different names for it, and in this view, knowledge learned through these arts or this education form was significant, impressive, and of a higher caliber to students. So there was more worth involved because it catered to each individual student rather than the whole body of students. So it was a thing where it was an idea that you didn't have to learn everything, you didn't have to take every single class, but the people, all of the students on campus were taking different classes, and those students would interact with each other and talk with each other, and pretty soon you would gain that knowledge even though you didn't have to take the class. And it mainly focused on memorization as a tool to gain knowledge, and it's still used today. James Thornton is an author of an education classic, and he's the one that referred to liberal arts as classical education. He says that liberal arts discipline and prepare the mind for the future. It's individualized learning, and it produces highly trained people. John Henry Newman was an author of the idea of a university. He grew up, and in his teens he decided that he wanted to join the Roman Catholic Church, and he became very religious. And then he decided that he wanted to write a new take on the idea of a university, or the concepts that are most effective for teaching students. So in Discourse 5, which is a section in his novel, he discusses how liberal education is of higher efficiency than utilitarian arts, and it's superior to it. Knowledge varies per student, like I said, so it's more individualized and specified for each student and their own specific needs, because not everybody takes in information the same way. It also maintains and establishes values and ethics, and he mentioned that knowledge has no end. And there's a quote I found by Socrates that says, "The only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing." So this means that knowledge is always limited. No matter how much you gain, you can't fully encompass all of it. It's never finished and never complete, but it's always continuing on.
And then current reality of getting a degree in liberal arts, although it does prepare you like internally and philosophically for being like a better person and being like a whole person, because instead of searching your entire life for who you are, and actually that was a bad way to put it. So liberal arts, it just helps self-development, and you are able to develop as a person, versus with modern education, when you go into a specialized field and when you get a degree in a specific area, then you're more likely to be able to sorry, I just lost it. So liberal arts, it's just difficult to find a job today in modern society, and although it prepares you as a person, it doesn't prepare you for the reality of the world. And that's what utilitarianism is kind of about. Like, you have to have like a tangible end goal, and that work will justify that end goal. And so, and then also before it was mentioning how, or part of our areas of study was that utilitarian arts wasn't as like highly respected as the liberal arts because you're like more of an intellectual if you study the liberal arts. However, in opposition to that, modern education, you see like engineering and medical degrees are really like difficult to get into, and I think they're all like really highly respected. So